week, Drake's ICEMAN is not just another album. After Kendrick, after the industry pressure, and after the question of whether Drake can reset hip-hop's commercial momentum, Toronto is back under the microscope. On Worldwide Entertainment TV Media, we showed the hopeful side of Toronto's industry story. Birdman went on Hot 97 and said J Soul could be the next superstar from Toronto. J Soul was in contact with Birdman. Cash Money was really watching the city. That was the dream version of the Drake effect. One Toronto superstar opens the door, and another Toronto artist gets a chance. But the other side is this. Toronto had talent, but it did not always have the industry infrastructure to protect, develop, and properly back that talent. That is one reason Drake had to go through America in the first place. Lil Wayne, Young Money, Cash Money, because Toronto had culture, but the global machine was still south of the border. And that lack of infrastructure created a dangerous middle ground. Some artists got real attention. Others got approached by people using the language of opportunity.
So now we're gonna speak some truth. When it comes on to Cash Money, let's clarify that for the world and for everybody who's been saying, you know, there's their naysayers and there's the people the haters, and then there's the people who really don't know nothing, but they're just going with the flow and what other people have to say. So can you clarify that when people say that you were signed to Cash Money, or were you not signed, or were you?
Yeah. So about the whole Cash Money thing, like, that's a big one, because like it's crazy what happened in my situation. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown what happened to me. About maybe 6 years ago, I was just doing music with some producers that I know from Cambridge locally, and somebody messaged me on Facebook, told me that they work for Cash Money, they're A&R, they wanna like me to come out to the studio, see what they can do for me. At the time I had a manager, and you know, I went and showed them all my stuff. They liked it, so they were pretty much trying to get me into some type of deal. Apparently that's what they said. They said they were Cash Money, but I don't 100% know, because I don't really trust anybody.
Yeah, fine.
So, you know, I kind of just went with it. They threw a little release party in Kitchener, and you know, I was living out there for a little bit. I kept going back and forth between Toronto and Waterloo just because like I got family on both sides, and I tried to make a life for myself there. And those guys just kind of told me like, oh, we can get you to see Birdman and all this stuff, and they're like, but you guys, you gotta put up the money. Like, we need about $20,000 to get you like a full-fledged project. And like, how many artists who are just wanting to make it through the door have $20,000 just sitting around? Unless they selling drugs, right, or something else, you know. And at that point, like, I'm like thinking to myself, like, is this legit, you know? But I did record some projects in their studio, and I did work with some people. I actually don't have 100% idea like what was going on, but I believe that they were Cash Money. They never went into detail.
When it comes to stuff like that, I believe, like, this is my opinion, guys. I always have to tell these people this. When it comes to investing in artists and things like that, right? I believe if I believe in you that much, that I would invest, and especially if you're coming from Cash Money or any big label like Bad Boy or any one of those big labels. Puffy's not gonna make you put up 20 grand. He's gonna put up that 20 grand because he believes in your craft.
And this is the thing too. Like, they were telling me like, oh, like they have connects with like Birdman and stuff in Miami. They said they worked out of Hit Factory in Miami, and that's where like all the Cash Money artists roll through. Like, even Drake is signed to like has some type of relations with Cash Money. But me personally, like, I was trying to understand how were they gonna take me from my small hometown out here, Toronto, bring me out there. I've never been on a plane before. Like, it didn't make any sense to me, and I'm supposed to just front them like 20 racks. Like, that didn't make sense to me. But then again, I could be wrong. But at the same time, I didn't have the money at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now, fast forward 6 years later, they are still doing their thing, and so like, I don't know if the opportunity was the right one, but then again, there's a lot of conspiracy around what goes on in the music industry too. Like, you don't know who's who.
Facts.
You don't know, like, maybe God protected me from something that I'm not supposed to be.
everything happens for a reason. So maybe.
And I don't like to badmouth any like labels or anything like that, but.
No, but if your radar is going up, it's like a woman's intuition.
That is the bigger Toronto issue. Drake made Toronto visible. But visibility is not the same as infrastructure. A cosign is not artist development. A rumor is not a rollout. A meeting is not a budget. And being close to the machine is not the same thing as being protected by it. In a recent We Love Hip Hop discussion about emerging Toronto artists, the same issue came up. The city is overflowing with talent, but the resources and platforms are not always there to take those artists worldwide.
Like worldwide platforms, like the bigger platforms. Like we need to have bigger platforms in the city that could really showcase these artists. So shout out to Toronto rap stars.
Big up, yeah.
You know what I mean? For doing that, but we kind of need a Rolling Loud for ourselves.
Yeah. And shout out to us because we're here talking about it too.
The facts.
You know what I'm saying? Because like there's outlets, but we're not seen on a world scale like that. Like we're trying to get there.
Yeah.
But if we had like the equivalent of like a Breakfast Club over here, or like the levels I'm talking about, right? Or the equivalence of a academics level, where when somebody, or No Jumper even for what they do on the level that they're at.
They talked about how Toronto needs bigger platforms, the kind of media machine where one appearance or one push can change an artist's career overnight. And that connects directly to the red flag. When a city has talent but not enough infrastructure, artists become vulnerable to unclear opportunities, fake access, and people using big industry names as bait. That is why National Treasure matters. If Drake uses that record to bring Pressa, another Canadian artist, or any Toronto voice into the frame, it becomes more than a feature. It becomes a test of whether the spotlight is being passed. But if Drake goes solo, that also says something, because Toronto may still be depending on one superstar to carry the whole country's rap visibility. That is the gap Drake filled for himself by going through Lil Wayne, Young Money, Cash Money, and America. But the question now is whether the next generation gets real infrastructure or just exposure. And if ICEMAN really is Drake's legacy checkpoint, maybe even his Opus moment, then Toronto has to ask what happens after him. If Drake ever slows down, retires, or stops being the city's main global engine, does Toronto have the infrastructure to push the next wave? Or does the spotlight fade because the system was built around one superstar? So tonight, when ICEMAN drops, WWETV is not only listening for disses, features, or rollout clues. We are listening for what Drake does with the Toronto spotlight. Does he pass it? Does he keep it? Does he bring Pressa or another Canadian artist into the frame? Or does National Treasure become Drake, making himself the symbol of Canada alone? Because after Drake made Toronto global, the real question is whether the city's artists are getting backed or just getting seen.